Tonight we're fortunate to have
Karaoke machine.
karaoke machine. You're exactly right. We're going to use it not for karaoke, but for amplifying some voices. We got Susie are here tonight. They live in St. George, and they've consented to come up and talk a little bit about remembrances from the Tasso side of the family. We sort of focus on the Rasmussen side. The Tasso side of the family is the family that Grandma was born into. Her parents were both born in Italy and came to the United States a long time ago. Maybe we'll hear a little bit about those stories, but we've invited Jim and Susie to just spend some time talking about that part of our heritage that is common to all of us that we share. So Jim and Susie, why don't you come and sit right here? We've got some microphones for you.
Go on.
Oh, yes.
Come on.
No, you're chewing.
You know, that's
Here,
a
I'll
good
hold
idea.
your purse.
We want
I don't really like it. Okay.
All right, everybody listen up.
And you don't know.
I'm talking to the microphone. Oh.
Well, anyway, a long time ago, Rena had written something about our families, our parents, and so the other morning, I got up early and I went through what she had written,
She
and
always
I
gets up early.
went to the computer and typed a few things, and I did make a copy for each of you. Okay, so should I do this a little bit, and then you can... Okay, I put the Tasso legacy. Father, Giacomo Pietro Tasso, who was James Peter. He was born 15th of July, 1877. And mother is Margarita Maria Silva, who is Margaret Marie. And she was born 3rd of September, 1883. That's a long, long time ago. And I put, taken from notes that Rena had written. Papa came to America in 1906 at the age of 29. He worked in the coal mines and was also a bartender. He was self-educated and was vice consul for the Italian people in the state of Wyoming. He became a Sweetwater deputy county assessor in 1917, taught Italian at night school in Rock Springs, Wyoming. Papa was a court interpreter and was called to settle problems or disputes. Whether people were having marital problems or if there was a serious accident or death, they would always call on him to go to the families and tell them what had happened. He could do figures in his head faster than a normal person could on paper. Our parents were married the 12th of September 1908 in Rock Springs. Pio Gerino was Papa's stepbrother and lived on the farm in Clifton as a partner in 1919. Pio was a member of our family and was treated as such. You want to say something about this so far?
We want to hear you talk in the microphone.
Yeah, good. Okay, here I go. The farm in Clifton was purchased in 1919, and in 1926 the family moved from Rock Springs to Idaho. Why didn't they move when they bought the farm? Jim? Why didn't they wait till 1926 to move to a farm if they bought the farm in 1919?
They bought the farm, and my brother Emo, when Dad said he was old enough to work, remember he worked in a bar, when he was old enough to finish the wines that are left in the glasses, he says, that's no place for to raise my family, so they bought a farm and moved out of there and went down in Idaho.
Okay. Let's see. Rena, Emil, Yoli, and Jim were all born in Rock Springs. Norma was born in Preston, Idaho. The James Tassos changed barren brush land into a productive farm. It can be said that they started from scratch, according to an article found in the Idaho Farmer newspaper. Papa was involved in community and county activities, was chairman of the school board in Clifton for 15 years, was on the Utah Poultry Board of Directors for Franklin County for many years, and also the Land Use Committee of Franklin County. Mama had schooling in Italy till the age of 10. Then she worked for her aunt, taking care of the cows. She spent most of her childhood days being a servant, as they were called then, shopping, cooking meals, and housekeeping for a wealthy family in Ivrea. She left Italy August 1908 at the age of 24. And when when Grandpa and I went over and picked up Craig from his mission, we went to Ivrea and Baldaceto Canavese and all of these places. Craig, do you remember all of this?
Very much.
Okay.
Well, we don't, so tell us.
Just want to comment.
I got a question.
Okay.
Did they know each other in Italy?
Yes.
And did they plan on getting together and getting married?
Yes.
Okay.
Baldaceto Canavese is a very, very small town. And anyway, I think everyone was very, very poor. And we went up to where Papa's home was, and we knew it was because Tasso was written on the top of the board up there. And it was very, very poverty-stricken. I don't think anyone lived there then, did they? Anyway, we were there.
Who did we see? Martino? Who did we see?
We saw two of my cousins, Martino and the other one was...
Piero?
No,
No.
Andre, no?
Andre Silva.
Yeah. And then my aunt, which would be Mama's youngest sister, was there. And she knew we were coming, and they had fixed a very, very nice meal for us. And she started to cry when she saw me. And she went in the bedroom and came out with this picture of our family that I have in my back bedroom. And she couldn't believe that I'd grown so much. I was 6 years old when the picture was taken. And it was a picture of our family when it was the 25th wedding anniversary. Okay, Jim, it's your turn. I'm sorry.
Shall I read the rest of your notes?
Make sure to hold that microphone really close.
Is this close enough?
Yep.
I have decided, I've read what Norma's giving here, and that's very, very good and quite precise. And what I'd like to do is take excerpts and supplement that, and not duplicate it. This is...
I'm sorry.
This is talking about Valate. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Valate.
Yeah.
But she married my brother and came to live with us on the farm. And we were used to drinking caffeine quite regularly, at least Pio and Emo, not me. And when Valate come there, she had coffee flavored Postum. And so I'd go to town once a week, and she says, buy some Postum for me. So I did. And what we had is regular coffee, that's dehydrated coffee, you know, in that bottle. And I poured it in the Postum bottle. And she drank that. She says, you know, this is much, much better than what we get down in Salt Lake. Where did you buy it?
It's the creamer.
I had a coach that coached football at Westside High School, Leonard Johnson, and he came up there and he says, we're having trouble with our athletes, so that we need a sort of a jacuzzi barrel. And if you've got any, and he says, you're the only people that I would know that has barrels. And I said, sure. So I gave him a barrel and he cut it in half. And then they put hot water in it, and it the whole gym was very odoriferous.
What was in the, what had barrel? Wine.
See, they made wine on the farm.
Oh, I thought somebody had beer. Oh, wine.
Busting that word of wisdom all over the place. Keep going. This is good. Who was smoking cigars next? Okay.
Tell us about freezes.
This
Tell us
is
about freezes.
Yeah, how did freezes start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking about
We're not to the
gratitude,
Q&A piece part yet.
an appreciation for your parents and your peers. We got water irrigation ditch about 2.5 miles from our farm, and we had to maintain a ditch, and periodically, because of gophers and stuff, the water would seep through that, and then the whole drainage ditch would break the ditch and go down and irrigate fields below that, not on our farm. And Dad and I, we went up there, and the ditch had broken, and I mean when it washes about from here to that table there, and the bank is up 3 feet high, so we had to move a lot of dirt to stop it. And then we went to the head gate and shut the water off, and then went and put it on. And finally, when we were through there, Dad was really tired. And I said to him, I said, "Pa," I said, "you're quite tired. Let me carry your shovel." And that's making a breakthrough with your parents. How many people have done that? Another incident with Mother is we were thin beets, sugar beets, and I don't know if any of you have heard of sugar beets or not. They're planted in a row, and you thin them out, and you have a hole about 8 inches wide or so, depending on if the beets come up, and then you thin them out so they're just one plant, and that's what develops into a sugar beet. And at one time when I was young, I'd be going, and Mother would be clear up to that table, and I'd be here hoeing and cussing myself and one thing and another. And finally, I'd come up there, and she'd help me go a piece about 25 feet, and I'd run up there and catch up with her. And then years later, I would do the same thing to her. And here again, that's making a breakthrough. And all through your life, you have to make these breakthroughs, but not consciously. And if you don't do that, you've lost something in life, in my opinion. People that's always not doing anything, and that appreciation, you're wrong. One day, Norma would go up and get the mail at Clifton, and she loved root beer. And so she'd go up and get root beer, and she'd a little sip all the way home, and one day she came home and put it in the refrigerator, and there's about a half a bottle left, and I noticed it. And I said, this must be something good. So I finished down about a fourth, and then I put some water and coloring in it and put it back there, and she never knew that till I told her one time, and she says, but she never admitted hearing that.
It didn't taste good at all. It tasted like water.
One thing about Norma, and then she could take her turn again. I bought a shotgun. I got a shotgun, a brand new one, and I was real proud of that. And Norma had shot my .22 a lot, and I says, Norma, I says, you got to try this shotgun out. And she says, does it kick? I said, no, not very much. And we were in the lane there, and she put it up to her shoulder, and what happened?
I've got my own mind. Well, anyway, I remember halfway up the lane, we had a big, long lane going up to our home. Anyway, Jim said, aim it for the sky. So I did and shot it, and it went back, fell down on the ground, and he laughed.
It was just a little shotgun. It wasn't very good. All right.
Well, I don't know if I should keep reading this or what. hear it or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Doc.
Not really. Well, we grew up in a strict Christian home. Papa was the head of the house. And I think Craig said, and Savina said too, in Italy, that's the way it is. The father was the head of the house. It strictly was that way. We spoke in Italian in our homes until we started going to school. And we didn't belong to any church, and Mom and Papa, for some reason, even though they were baptized Catholic, they never went to the Catholic Church. Never went. There was no religion in our home whatsoever. Well, after we had, wait a minute. Papa said that when he was in Italy, he was asked to study to become a Catholic priest. He studied, learned a lot about the church, and decided he could fulfill the position. So that was a deciding factor on coming to America to live. In due time, all of us were baptized Mormons, and what happened was when we moved to Clifton, everyone was Mormons there, and so anyway, they decided that we might as well be Mormons too. However, we didn't go to church that much. We were baptized, but not too much. I did go to Mutual, and I really liked that. In due time, all of us were baptized in the Mormon church. Papa was ordained a high priest, was active in the church, and did temple work before he died. And Mama was taken ill, and she died just shortly after Gary was born, and so her work was done in due time. Papa had the theory that we as children should be taught to do everything in case we had to. We lived on a very large farm, and there was always plenty to do. We worked in the fields, we thinned, hoed, and topped sugar beets, worked in the hay fields, pulled a horse to lift the hay fork when stacking hay, and it was Pio's job to be on the haystack, wasn't he? He's the one that formed the haystack. And as I got older, I was the one that made the horse go up and down to get the hay from the wagon up onto the stack. Anyway, we milked cows, separating the milk with a separator, and sold the cream and the skim milk we fed to the pigs. So we had a lot of pigs too. We had chickens, a lot of chickens, and we bought baby chicks in the spring, or I guess in the winter, and raised them, sold the fryers, and then the laying hens, we'd keep them, and then the older ones, as they got too old, we'd sell them. But the main thing for the chickens was for the eggs that we sold. We had a huge garden. How large would our garden have been? Acres?
2 acres.
Big garden. I don't know what. Big garden. It was a huge garden. A lot of work to take care of it, to plant it, to hoe it, to water it. And then when you have all the vegetables and all that, there's all that work. In our home, we were taught to do everything. Prepared meals, making bread, baked, canned everything, made sausages, cured our own meat, and made cheeses. We did not have a freezer at that time. And our parents' pride and joy was their garden. And it really was, wasn't it? It really was. Go ahead, Jim.
And they would give their produce away to anybody that wanted it and needed it.
And a lot of people in Clifton would come down to visit, but they would go home with their carloads of fruits and vegetables. They could have raised them too, but for some reason they didn't. But we always gave a lot away. The first years on the farm, we used to pick string beans, and then we'd ship several sacks and send them back to Rock Springs on the train, and they'd be sold at a market up there. Do you want to read this for a while? Okay.
When fall would roll around, it was harvest time. Our basement was a beautiful sight to behold. Row and rows of shelves for canned fruits, apples, plums, peaches, pears, raspberries, jams, jellies, butters, marmalades, juices, all kinds of vegetables, pickles, canned chicken, and the potato cellar with squash and pumpkins. A big crock filled with homemade salami. And I still have that recipe on how we made the salami. Dad wrote it on a big clipboard, and I have that clipboard. And it's very interesting. And they would kill pork, 2 pork in the fall, or when maybe it's in here. They would kill 2 pork and then render the lard and put the lard in the salami around it so it would protect it because we didn't have a freezer. We would take our wheat to Preston and return with a year's supply of flour. In those days, we didn't have a deep freeze to store meat, so it was cured. The sausage was layered in crock jars and filled with lard. This preserved the sausage. We seldom had baked potatoes because Mama would say she ate them all of the time in Italy. She wanted to dress the potatoes a different way. This was America. No more poverty for her. Mama always baked bread in big round loaves right on the floor of the oven. Therefore, our sandwich slices were huge and thick. I used to be embarrassed when I was at lunch at school as the other girls had baked bread in tins that were square. So I worked on Mama until she bought some bread thins. What's funny? Now I find myself buying those huge big loaves of bread. As a cook, Mama was unsurpassed. She was perfect. Never have I eaten breaded veal like she used to make. Her other specialties include ravioli, spaghetti, roast turkey and dressing, fried chicken, gnocchi. Her roasts were superb, and whatever Mother cooked, it was excellent. And I liked her rabbit that she used to make. I'd catch the white-haired rabbits, not the jackrabbits, but the white hair, and she would do that and have a special sauce with that. That was fantastic. Mama loved the outdoors, and many times I would do the housework and cooking, and she would work in the garden or even in the fields with the men. Mama had a beautiful voice, and often as she worked, you could hear her sing several songs and operas. She liked to sing La Donna Mobile. Threshing time was looked forward to because then Papa would determine how many bushels of wheat, oats, barley we would get per acre. The threshers looked forward to coming to our place because they were always well fed. To me, it meant getting up early, preparing a good breakfast, washing all the dishes, and getting ready for 2 more meals. At the mealtime, platters and platters of chicken roast, mashed potatoes, and many different vegetables and salads. A variety of pies were placed on the table. The men never went hungry. Around 4 p.m., Mother, Yoli, and I would make sandwiches and punch and take it out to them in the field.
To this day, when we meet some of these men, they remember harvest days on the Tasso farm. And I remember Papa had on his checks, it said the Belvedere Farm. Savina, what does Belvedere mean?
Belvedere.
Beautiful
Belvedere.
Beautiful view, beautiful scene.
Farm, Clifton, Idaho, James Tasso and Company, proprietor. Okay, some familiar sights in our home, and I remember these so well. Papa wore a kind of a brown slipper, and it was called a Romeo slipper. It was a certain one that was kind of high up and then with the heel in, but he never bothered to pull the back up, so the back was always crushed down, so kind of that way. Okay, all the time. Mama, these are some other sights I remember. Papa and Mama sitting outdoors under the trees or on the porch or on the living room floor reading the Italian paper La Voce del Popolo, which came right from Italia. hearing Papa call Mama Maggie, as he always called her. When Papa sat on the floor, a familiar sight, it was always on his knees. I don't know why he liked to sit that way, but he did.
He'd put his, fold his leg and sit on his foot.
Yeah. Whenever on a chair, one leg would be under him. Mama always waited on Papa, getting all his clothes, shoes, and socks and shirt for him, and needless to say, his shoes were always shined.
Will you reread that for Susie?
Mama always waited. Mama would sit on. She always had a bench in the kitchen. It was about this size, about that big. She sat there a lot, didn't she? And she'd sit on this bench in the kitchen, and she'd have all the shoes around her, and then she would call to everyone, "Bring me all your shoes so I can polish them." That was her job besides everything else she did. And I remember in Soda Springs, I don't know what, maybe like on a Saturday morning, I had doing the same thing. I was in the kitchen shining Grandpa's shoes, and this gal came, Edith Hadley, came to see me, and she said, "Norma, what on earth are you doing?" And I told her, and she said, "Don't you ever do that. He can shine his own shoes." That's what she said, but of course I didn't listen to her. Mama loved to crochet. She couldn't read directions from a book, but she would look at the picture and then go to work. She did beautiful work using number 50 crochet thread or finer. Her bedspread was a treasure made with a popcorn stitch, and I did bring it, but I didn't bring it here. It's in the hotel room, so if you'd like to look at it, I have it. Besides crocheting, Mama embroidered, did hem stitching by hand, and knitted. Her hands were never idle, a trait that was inherited by us all. Don't you think that's a true statement, Jim?
Yep.
Okay, do you want to read about what? Okay.
Norma mentioned that we'd take the wagons out in the field and load up the hay, whether it was a pile of hay or a windrow, and throw it up on the wagon. And then it was our job to run a Jackson fork. And a Jackson fork is a large, either a 4 or a 6-tine fork. That she mentioned that Mother would run the Jackson fork, the horse or the tractor, and come down and you put the fork in the wagon after it's been tromped, and then it claps, and then you'd take it up the hay, and Uncle Pio would be the stacker. And when you'd get excited, you'd put a little extra pressure to really try to get a load. Now you could put up almost a third of a load up at once, and he'd cuss because he couldn't handle it up there. And he said, "Smaller, smaller." And one day I was doing that, and Mother thought I said okay, and so she took me up right with the fork and the hay and all. I told her to stop and come back, so then she put me back on the wagon. You remember that?
No. But that was my job when I got on the team. I did not like to do it. We had a lot of horse flies that was always on the horses, and then the horse would start to buck, you know, because they get bitten by these horse flies. Go ahead.
One day, Emil and Richard Baxter was Yoli's husband. We decided we'd go up and get the mail, and it had snowed about 6 or 8 inches. And we had a pickup, and I was driving, and we got down there by Bert Henderson, and the road comes down, and then there's a sharp right turn in the road. And Richard says, "What are you slowing down for?" I says, "You know, if I go this speed, I'll slip right off in the borrow pit." He says, "That's all right. Emo and I will push you out." So I says, "All right." Right in the borrow pit, and they both Richard was laughing and Emo was cussing me.
They got
Oh, yeah. And with my new shotgun, I would walk along Deep Creek. It's a creek that is in back of our farm. And I got the most beautiful bird there. And it was a duck was what it was. And I brought it home, and I would bring it home, and Pio would clean it, and Mother would cook it. And I brought it up there, and Pio said, "Boy, that's a pretty bird." But he says, "I don't think it's very good." And I says, "Why?" And he opened the bill, and it had teeth in it. It was a loon, and it smelled like a fish. And he says, "That's all right." So I threw it away. And Dad used to be very, very conscientious. He would work morning, noon, and night all of the time. And he would get up. See, chickens, to be productive in laying, had to have, I don't remember, like 8 hours of daylight or 8 hours of light. So he would get up at, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, put the lights on of the chicken so they would have their lights, and then he'd shut them at night. So that kept going on, and then I thought, oh, this is rather ridiculous. So I bought a light switch. It would come on at 6 in the morning and go off at 6 at night. And he would walk. We had 3 bedrooms upstairs. Emil and I lived in the first bedroom, and then Dad and Mother in the middle one, and Norma in the far one, and Pio on the other wing of the house. And he would, at 6 o'clock there, he'd walk over to see if the lights had gone on for the chickens. And finally and all of the time you're trying to get labor-saving devices for them. And I know I came home from school one day and I says, "Pa, you need a tractor here." And so I think we were about the 4th or 5th Ford tractor. And they weren't called Ford Ferguson then. They were just a Ford tractor in the Preston area. And what made them so good was the 3-point pickup. You could plow and just do everything with it, and no exertion of labor. Just fantastic. And then after we got that, I guess everybody had one. And one time we had a missionary that was going on. In fact, it was Joe Bailey. He was going to go on a mission, and so we had him and his parents come down, and Mother says, "What should we feed him?" And I said, "How about pheasant?" She says, "I'll cook it if you catch him, kill him." So I did. So I said, "Okay." So I think I got about 6 pheasants, and then we had enough there that we just had the pheasant's breasts, and Joe and his parents came down, and I didn't find out till years later. He says, "What do you mean feeding us pheasant breasts?" And it was all breasts, you know, and they just really something.
Well, getting back to Mama, these are some things that she really loved to eat, or loved. White Carol, log cabin syrup, sponge cake, angel food cake. And she also liked lemon flavored cake. She used to make those. She loved tapioca pudding, lemon flavoring in anything. And she also enjoyed a hamburger on a bun with lots of ketchup. And like Savina was saying, none of these are Italian foods. None of them. Some foods that we all remember, and I surely remember eating these at home. Bagna cauda, chestnuts, roast them in the oven. Polenta, cardoni with bagna cauda. Artichokes, sambayun. Is that how you say that, Savina?
Is it a dessert?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sambayone.
Sambayone. See.
What is it?
Oh dear.
It's a cream sauce with a beverage. Whip it up.
What kind of beverage?
And they put a little
White.
rum in
White.
it.
White rum?
It wasn't rum,
Mother
was it?
used white wine.
White wine, yeah. But anyway, I can remember her making it. It was really nice.
Was it the feeling you had after you ate it that made it so good?
I don't know. We didn't have that much.
Oh.
But I was telling somebody today, I guess it was you too, she'd make the custard like with scrambled eggs. I don't know what else. There's cream in it. But how she'd measure the wine, which she would fill a half of the, she'd crack an inch, half of it, and she would pour that in. That would be one, I don't know, I guess one serving for each, I don't know. Anyway, it was really good. That was a special thing. Freezes something that Susie doesn't know about. Okay, now, Jim, why didn't you eat freezes at home
Well,
after you were married?
we never had the beverage to go with the freezes, so we never had them.
We did.
You used chocolate.
No.
Well, no, before.
Not initially.
No,
Initially.
before.
And Jim, you're absolutely right. It's very good with the appropriate beverage.
It's that Postum stuff.
Yeah. The stuff that tastes really good that you don't get in Salt Lake, right?
Anyway.
That's right.
And then another one that I didn't make too much is called Supapa McCoy, and Emil really liked that. Real well, made with bread, cabbage,
Chicken broth.
tomatoes.
Did you guys make up, like, did your family make it up, make up freezes? Or was it like a recipe from way back when?
I don't
Just
know.
mixed it.
Never had a recipe, but I think Mama told me once that the poor people in Italy up in the hills, because they came from the Piedmont area of the Alps, the people there used to fix it that way. And I don't have a recipe. I just put stuff in, and it turns out different every time, but it's not too bad. Anyway, ate a lot of grapes, gorgonzola, and a lot of other cheeses. Hey. And then we moyed a lot, which is moya. Ingredients would be olive oil and vinegar, a little salt and pepper. And then you dip in, and we used to have this for supper quite a bit at the time. Radishes, green onions, artichokes, what else? Tomatoes, yeah.
Dandelion greens.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, we ate a lot of dandelion. A lot.
What does it taste like?
Dandelion? Well, we used to just pick the very tender ones, and they're quite. I think you can buy them when you order a good salad in a large restaurant. You can have them.
That plus anchovies.
Yeah.
That's very tasty.
Okay, I'll do a little more and then Jim can finish them. Hospitality was practiced in our home. It didn't make any difference when it was. The first question after the salutation was, have you eaten, or when did you eat last? Food was prepared immediately and no one ever left the Tasso home hungry. Okay, you can finish it.
And you know, we used to do that in our home too, because Dad and Mother. And we had Marge J. Twitchell. They went to Salt Lake and they came home and they were too late to fix dinners. We'll stop in at Jim and Susie's and they'll give us something to eat. Well, we had just eaten and we were through and we just hadn't even entered our mind. And Marge says the next day, she says, you know, you didn't even feed us. I mean, so you can set up a precedence, but you got to keep it going. In our family, we always celebrated everyone's birthday. It was a very special time with a delicious meal and gift. As we enjoyed family picnics, going to lava for a swim, or to a hot pool, picking choke cherries in the canyon, the delicious picnic lunch turned out to be like a banquet. To illustrate that party there, I went to Cokeville and Rena had died. And I says, Clarence, we gotta go to Soda and have a birthday. I didn't even say a birthday. We gotta have a party for Norma. And it wasn't the party. So I picked up Clarence, and he says, just a minute. And he gave Norma a birthday gift, thinking it was her birthday. And I said, no, it's just a party. I mean, another way you can build people up. We had Italian friends who lived in Trenton, Lynn Rose, Preston, Lewiston, and activities were planned, and we would take turns all going to someone's home on Sunday and having a big meal and get together. Mother died on the 13th of September, 1951 after a long illness. Papa had a bad habit that started when he worked in the coal mines. He used Copenhagen snuff, which he snuffed up his nose. He always had a big red bandana handkerchief, and sometimes blue. They were chores to launder. Papa was baptized on the 3rd of May, 1952 at the age of 69. Mama was baptized by proxy on the 13th of June, 1953. Pio was also baptized. Papa died 26th of December 1960 at Ogden, Utah at the age of 83. So I've got 3 more years to plug along.
Hope.
Any questions from the floor before we let them relax totally? Certainly. Speak loud.
Are we doing something else right now? I don't know. You can keep going.
This will be short because I know you've all been sitting a long time, but Valette and I reaped the harvest of all the hard work and the friendliness and kindliness that the Tasso family did when we married Emil and Jim. And when Valette moved to Preston, she went into the bank one day to cash a check and no one knew her. And she asked them if they needed ID, and the fellow looked at the name Tasso on the check and said, with that name, you don't need any identification. And I think that's the kind of heritage that they left to all of you.